With that, I'll kick it over to Moinul Khan, our VP of Product Management, who's going to look at a real-world security incident and take us through the anatomy of that breach. So Moinul, over to you.
Thank you, Rich. Folks, good afternoon. By the way, Rich, there is a question on the chat window from David. Would you like to address that first?
I have not read it. Apologies. I should have been on top of this as we were going there.
Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is around, operational technology where business IT has adopted cloud solutions and OT does not want to surrender control. And I think that, operational technology is, a lot of these are embedded systems, with running, legacy operating systems and the like. I think that, that causes some challenges themselves where perhaps the software running these systems is not updated, or even the backends themselves don't necessarily support cloud-based solutions. But I think that what Graham was talking about, right? This whole kind of teaming approach, and bringing security to be kind of an equal and a collaborative team member with someone like that OT team. I think a lot of those same themes that we talked about with the application teams that in the past have been somewhat resistant to working with security. I think a lot of those approaches can be, can be extended here as well. And David, I'll take your name down. Happy to reach out. We have a couple of OT experts here at Zscaler that I think can, really help share a lot from a lot of experience with other organizations in places like the energy sector. So we'll reach out, have a deeper discussion there, and I appreciate you taking the time to ask the question. Great.
Thank you, Rich. What I'm going to cover in my section is a demonstration of a major cloud data breach that we have seen in the industry. I will walk you through how it happened, but more importantly, how the breach could have been prevented. So let's first talk about the incident. In 2019 is when this particular incident happened. The client lost 100 million credit card application data due to cloud misconfigurations. Again, the client is one of the largest credit card company in the US. They were hosting their application from Amazon Web Services. The problem really happened because of a misconfigured WAF, the web application firewall, open source based WAF that they were using to protect their consumer facing application. And the attacker, to attack, she did not really use rocket science. It was a very well-known method that she used called SSRF, server-side request forgery. Essentially what it is you can trick a server to run commands when it's not supposed to, or it's not allowed to, right? Again, very little effort, but that caused a major, data breach in the cloud. Now, you would think that this was kind of like a one-off incident, but this is very common across all organizations. In fact, Gartner is saying that cloud misconfiguration is causing 95% of the cloud data breaches today, right? So let's dig deeper. How exactly it happened. Before I talk about this, let me just talk about a couple of constructs, AWS constructs that you need to understand. When you deploy your application, when you deploy your workload, you are doing lift and shift, or you have a born in the cloud type of application using infrastructure. AWS will give you some default, firewall policies. They call it security groups. And basically the security policy groups, like I said, it's firewall policy. It just says who can come in and who can go out, right? So that's one construct. The other one is, if you are using WAF and that WAF is running on an EC2 instance, you also have to make sure all your configurations are correct. You have all the guardrails and so on and so forth. The third one that I highlighted with red, it's called CI/CD role. When you have a workload running in the cloud, you would end up creating, IAM policies, IAM roles essentially what you are basically defining is who can access to that application, right? So these are some of the constructs that are very common when you are using public cloud infrastructure. Now, in this particular case, what exactly happened? There was no problem on the security groups. The security groups allowed only 443 communication, which is, you can make an HTTP call because again, it's a consumer-facing application. The front end needs to be open, and so from security group perspective, there was no problem there. On the WAF side, they had a misconfiguration there because the WAF, one of the component was configured with a lower security version. It's called IMDS. It's basically, when you make an HTTP request, IMDS returns all the metadata for that EC2 instances for that compute environment. And the version 1 was configured. Version 1 has vulnerability. It doesn't really challenge the requester. Version 2 should have been configured here. And then the last problem that they had is they had a CI/CD role. The CI/CD is really for your DevOps. It's for your software engineers. When you create a CI/CD role, that role should be attached to CI/CD tools like Terraform, Jenkins, and Ansible, and so on and so forth. But by mistake, they attached that CI/CD role to WAF, and that's a huge misconfiguration because of that. The attacker ran a simple command. They got through the security groups, and they basically asked WAF to return the secret key so that they can become the part of the CI/CD role. That was as simple as that. And then when they become the part of the CI/CD role, they had access to their S3 buckets where the company is storing 100 million credit card application information, and then attacker just collected profits, right? So again, simple misconfiguration, but the breach was massive, right? So, Graham, Greg, they talked about, segregation is important. Graham also talked about there are lots of, the tools have gotten better. Greg talked about automation. This is exactly what we are trying to do with Zscaler CSPM and CIEM. CSPM stands for Cloud Security Posture Management. CIEM is looking at overprivileged permission. So, if the CSPM and CIEM, the security policies are in place, CSPM will make sure that you have the right security group configuration. You do not have a publicly exposed bucket. You do not have database port, SSH port open. CSPM will also make sure that your WAF configuration, everything is good. And then with CIEM, we are looking at workload and permissions and identity and access management policy. And whenever we find an overprivileged permission, the tool will automatically kick in and take remediation action, right? So just to kind of like go deeper on CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, what we have done is we have built about close to 3,000 predefined policies. Why? Because Rich and Greg both mentioned automation is important. The tool is simple tool. It's an API-based security tool. You onboard your public cloud accounts. As soon as these accounts get onboarded, we fire up these 3,000 signatures. We get a snapshot of your current configuration, and then we compare and contrast that configuration with cloud security best practices like CIS benchmark, NIST cybersecurity framework. We have also built 15 different compliance frameworks. So we should be able to tell you, what your security compliance posture is against PCI DSS or HIPAA or GDPR, SOC, ISO, and so on and so forth. The CIEM is doing very similar things. As soon as these accounts get onboarded, we discover identities, we discover all cloud assets, we look at entitlements, who has access to what, and then using machine learning technology, we figure out what are the overprivileged identities in your environment. Once we figure this out, we prioritize the risk. There is this concept of high risk, medium risk, and low risk, and then auto remediation kicks in, right? So once again, it's not complex technology from deployment perspective. It's not a firewall, it's not a web proxy. You don't change the network security settings. All it is an API-based tooling that automate that whole process for you. It's a continuous security assurance, right? So let me take literally a minute or two, kind of like walk you through the product itself. When you log into CSPM, depending on the persona, there are different type of visibility that has been built natively. So you can start with asset security, where your assets are, which geolocation they are at, which ones are high security, where the high security problems are, low security, moderate, and so on and so forth. If your persona is a compliance persona, then right off the bat, the tool should be able to tell you what your posture is. InfoSec, SecOps, they really like the idea of focusing on critical risk. So the tool has this concept of risk likelihood versus risk impact. Right off the bat, we should be able to tell you these are the 76 problems or perhaps 10 high priority problems that you should really pay attention to. And from the breach perspective, the client breach that I was talking about, this is exactly where that secret sauce is. As you can see, we have built about 3,000 predefined signatures, predefined policies. You don't have to worry about creating custom policies and all that stuff. When you go to AWS networking, this is where we are checking all your firewall policies and all your security groups, right? You hop over to the CIEM dashboard. The CIEM, again, it's all about, who are the users, how many human users have permissions to connect to your workloads. At the same time, we are talking about non-human users. Typically, hundreds of API-based applications are connected, so you need to pay attention to it. And from that incident perspective, on the CIEM, we have a signature that is exactly focusing on that particular problem that I demonstrated. This is where we are looking at EC2 settings, and we are saying the version has the vulnerability itself. It needs to be a higher version, IMDS version, so that it's properly configured. And then the excess overprivileged access permission that that incident had. Again, these are some of the things that we are building with machine learning technology. For example, in this particular case, it's detecting this user called Amos. He has access to this environment through these roles and policies, and that would have been highlighted on that particular incident. We would have catched that, saying that the CI/CD role should not be attached to a web application firewall, right? So that's really the quick demo. So before I end the demo, let me kind of like reinforce that. Reinforce one more time is that cloud misconfiguration related to IaaS, PaaS, identity is very common. It's happening across the board, and everyone that are using this public cloud infrastructure should pay attention to it. CSPM-CIEM technology, again, simple technology that can really address these use cases, automate the whole process. CSPM and CIEM, it's more like your doorknobs. If you have a house, you need to, when you go out, you need to make sure that your door is locked. As simple as that. And everybody should consider one of these tools to make sure that their workload is fully protected. With that, over to Kavita.
Thank you, Moinul. And many thanks to Greg and Graham for sharing all your real-world perspectives, journeys, and stories. I also wanted to thank Rich for moderating the great conversation. It was an extremely dynamic conversation today. And Moinul, obviously, for diving into the anatomy of the breach. From Zscaler, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for attending today's session. If you have missed any part of today's session, we would like to revisit it. We will have a recording available at cxosummit.zscaler.com tomorrow. But let's continue this conversation. I would really like you to join me and your IT leadership colleagues in the private Zscaler CXO community LinkedIn group that we have created. We will be sharing an invitation for you to join us there. This is a non-sales, non-marketing, practitioner to practitioner peer group on LinkedIn where you can exchange ideas, best practices, and engage with your peers. And from all of us here at Zscaler, we would like you to take care of yourselves, stay safe and healthy, and we'd love to see you at episode 2 on July 1st, where we will be discussing a very interesting topic around reducing the IT carbon footprint and to make a case for green security. Until then, take care and goodbye.